Okay, welcome back to this channel. And today we're going to talk about a little bit more of a darker subject, which people are probably not going to agree. But I'm coming to you from the perspective of being logical, as well as somebody who has experience working with families. People want to know why the resilient Jenkins children have not been removed. And we're going to go through it. First, I want to show you the video that caused a whole bunch of outrage.
As you can read in the caption above, we're a family of 6 going on 7 living in a 1-bedroom apartment. As the kids grow older, that means we constantly have to adapt our environment to give them more means for privacy and extra space. When outside our environment appears cluttered, disorganized, what have you. But quite frankly, after making do for nearly 3 years now, I have nothing but a grateful spirit for the roof over our head. Generally, the instant judgment me and my husband receive, why have so many kids if you don't have enough space for them? See, my perception is judgment comes from a place of not having the experience. When you've experienced enough, you generally don't judge people. I can tell you after everything I've been through in the past 3 years, there's very little I have to judge people. I would be lying if I said there wasn't a point in my life that I was so naive that I might have judged a poor person based off their appearance. And like I said, I have learned a lot. I generally look like I'm roughing it, but that's because our kids come first. I do everything I can to keep our environment clean and tidy. When it comes down to it, I could shove everything my kids have in one bedroom of some of these houses I see, and it would really look like nothing. We try to teach our kids to take care of what they have, be grateful for what we have, keep praying and pushing for the growth that we want. Appreciate y'all watching. See you in the next video.
Okay, so y'all saw that video, right? Now, initially, people were very outraged about this video, rightfully so, because what they saw was neglect and abuse. As somebody who has previously worked in the child welfare system, I can tell you that this is poor decision making, but it does not constitute a removal. And I'm going to explain to you why, because a lot of people seem to have a lot of confusion and anger over the fact that these children have remained with the mother. Now, she likes to air out her dirty laundry. I don't agree that this is the correct way to do it. I also think there needs to be laws that protect children from the internet. She's allowed to post whatever she wants, but I really strongly, I'm on team protect the children from scrutiny and embarrassment. And we don't know how these children are going to look at this in the future. No law exists right now that protects children from exploitation of people that make irresponsible decisions. Unfortunately, that just doesn't exist right now. We are in a society that is evolving faster than the laws can keep up. And that's just the reality. What I want to say is some of the reactions were warranted. I'm not gaslighting any of you all. If you all think that the children are not in a safe space, I get that. If you think these children are living under neglect, I get that. I see it as neglect, but it's not about how I feel. It's not personal. It's what the law says. If you're looking at it from the perspective of like, in my household, this will not fly, that is your household. But as a general society, we have a lot of poor people out here. So let's look at some of the comments. If you saw, Brittany says, my brain won't allow this make sense. So I think she meant to say my brain won't allow this to make sense. And Mads says, I think at some point we have to ask ourselves, are we doing it out of selfishness to fill a void in ourselves or out of love? Sometimes it's better to admit you're in over your head. So basically, Alex Powell, this needs reported. I think what they meant to say was this needs to be reported. And this is my thing. I want you all to know that I went straight to the Oregon website, and because this is where they're located. They are located in the state of Oregon, Portland. I want you to know where the state is coming from and why children are not removed in situations like this one right here. It says neglect. There are no injuries or circumstances to support that other abuse types has occurred or is occurring, but it's based on the adult's failure to act. There is a real and plausible threat to the child's safety. So a lot of people are saying, well, these kids are living in the living room. That's a safety concern. It is to you. It is absolutely a concern to you. Do we like it? No, but it is not against the law to place children in the living room. It just isn't. And unfortunately, that's just what they have to go off of. Let me make this bigger. Let's continue. It says, consider threat of harm, neglect. When the information in the report indicates that there is behavior, conditions, or circumstances that pose a real and plausible threat to child safety, in that the child is likely to experience neglect. See neglect definition. Examples include. Basically, what they're saying here is that, and by the way, let me just address something really quick because there's confidentiality clause. There is a federal policy that prevents child welfare services of any state to make a statement on whether families are in child welfare services or there's an ongoing report. Sometimes, once in a while, when there's a public outcry, they will make a statement to reassure the public, but it is against the law, and the family can file a lawsuit. Child welfare has their own problems. We all know that. But what we're not going to do is blame child welfare workers and say that they're not doing their job. The reality is that they cannot make a statement whether they are checking on this family or not. They are not allowed by law to make a comment on anything that is ongoing. Let's find out what they're talking about here, where it says see neglect definition. So I pulled this from the Oregon.gov.odhs rules/policies. So this is coming directly from them, and it is updated. So basically what this is saying is below are abuse types applied when determining if information received is a report of abuse. Neglect is the negligent treatment of a child, including but not limited to the failure to provide adequate food, clothing, shelter, supervision, protection, or medical care that is likely to endanger the child's health or welfare. So that is very clearly outlined. These children do not fall under that category. Now, do we like the fact that she is living in a one bedroom and it just got worse after that, but the children are still not experiencing the lack of any of these things? So failure to provide the child's basic needs is neglect, which she is not doing. And this is where the public is outraged, rightfully so. Again, I'm not here to gaslight you and tell you that you're not seeing what you're seeing. It is outrageous that this woman has this many kids and she is continuing to have children, knowing that she can't possibly provide the attention that they need. However, all of these kids in the home appear to have adequate food, clothing, shelter, supervision, and protection. But as you see here, this does not constitute neglect. There's no substantiated case here. Failure to provide for a child's basic needs. The child's basic needs are unmet to the extent that their daily activities are or will be severely impacted. They develop or suffer worsening injury or illness, and or their physical health and development are impacted. So as y'all can see, this woman is constantly posting food videos, and I'm pretty sure whenever Child Welfare Services shows up, there is food available to the children. It does not say what kind of food they have to have. It just says they have to have food. For example, if it's dead winter and a child does not have a coat and the parents are over here living it up lavishly, but they refuse to provide the child a coat, that is neglect. That is a reason to get involved. It, however, does not constitute a removal right away. The whole removal process is a process that needs to be seen by a court, a family court, and it has to be approved by a judge. A lot of people have Child Welfare Services as the ultimate decision makers, when that's far from the truth. It has to go to a judge. They have to provide proof, and during that process, the parents have a lawyer as well representing them, saying that this removal is not necessary. So even if this went to court, which court is public, by the way, anybody can go to the court. Even if this went to court, the judge could have decided this does not constitute a removal. It may constitute intervention, family and services, but it does not constitute a removal. The child's living conditions are unsanitary and contain hazards that either have or likely will lead to a child's injury or illness if not resolved, and the adult has not attempted to resolve the conditions. Consider the age and development status of the child and to what extent the specific living conditions pose a danger to the child. Child Welfare Services cannot just do a removal. It's just not possible based on the law. You don't have to agree with it. But as a Child Welfare Services worker and as somebody who is running Child Welfare Services, they would be in a whole bunch of litigation problems if they did a removal for this. Okay, and this is where people have the biggest problem. They think that this is not a safe environment for those kids. However, based on the law, I'm not excusing it, nor am I saying that she's accurate or correct in the way that she's raising her children. But based on the law, this does not constitute Child Welfare Services even having them in services. Another thing that people were concerned about was the lack of supervision. Unfortunately, she is providing the supervision that the children need. And considering that both of these individuals in the home are not working, these children have more than enough supervision. So let's read this really quick. An adult does not provide and or arrange for supervision appropriate for the child's age, cognitive ability, and or physical condition. Consider the ability of the person left responsible for the child and the child's age and developmental status. So basically what they're saying is there's children, if A child is left, let's say that a child who is 16 years old is autistic, is left with a 3-year-old. That is lack of supervision. That is an example of them saying, yeah, I have a 16-year-old that is watching my 3-year-old. And you're thinking to yourself, well, that's not bad, until you learn that the other child who is 16 doesn't have the mental capacity to possibly provide the accurate care for that 3-year-old. Even if you ran to the store, that is a dangerous scenario, because this 16-year-old suffers from a developmental problem and a mental illness that could cause the other child to be at harm. As a matter of fact, the 16-year-old probably shouldn't be left home alone. But I'm just saying, this does not present in this particular family. This is where people felt like Stephanie is not protective of her children. Again, does this family lack common sense by having all of them living in one place? Yes, they do. And it sucks that these children are going through it, and she's airing it out on TikTok and it's going viral. And now these children have no anonymity ever again. It sucks for them. However, it is not against the law. The fact that there is no law that protects children from virtual exploitation means that she, as a parent, has every right to place her children on the internet, regardless of how we feel. There's nothing we can do about that. There is nothing Child Protective Services can do about that. There is no law here basically saying that the child is being exploited. Now, if her child was being used by a cousin, an aunt, a grandma, and they don't have custody of that child, she could say that this child is being exploited. But because she's the mother, she gets to make that decision. And we don't have to like it, but it's not against the law. Medical neglect happens when the delay, refusal, or failure to seek, obtain, and or maintain necessary medical, dental, or mental health care when person reasonable knows or should reasonably be expected to know that such actions may have an adverse impact on the child. Failure to provide the child with immunizations or routine child medical appointments does not constitute medical neglect in and of itself. All these children appear to be fine. Now, we don't know their medical history because of HIPAA. So that's another thing too that gets in the way, is these HIPAA laws. When it comes to HIPAA, Stephanie would have to sign a release of information so the Department of Health and Human Services can intervene and go pull the children's medical records if the children are going to one medical doctor. This job is not meant to remove children for TikTok content that we don't like. This is another one which people were confused about. Access or exposure to harmful substances. An adult has knowingly or intentionally or negligently exposed the child to harmful or controlled substances that will likely impact the child's health or life. This is basically saying like you're exposing your child to drugs, which this family apparently is not doing. So physical abuse. This is another one that people were concerned about, but not so much, right? So I'm not going to continue going over this. What I am going to say is that poverty is not reason for removal. Now, we can all agree that poverty has a huge impact on families and children. We're not sitting here disagreeing that at all. And I don't agree with the way that they are raising their children. I think it's extremely irresponsible and they need to do better and they should have done better. But the children are here. The toothpaste is out of the tube. You cannot put it back. This may not be the way that you're raising your children. This may not be the way that I raise my children. This may not even look appropriate to a lot of people. But believe it or not, a lot of people live in a 1-bedroom apartment or a 1-bedroom home, or they live in a 1-bedroom. They live out of cars with their children, and their children are not removed. Sometimes foster parents sign up to take on 3 children at a time, and they end up with 5. Why? Because you're removing 5 children from one family, and it's impossible to keep them together because you might have somebody who only provides care to infants, whereas another one only provides care to teens. So even though the subject you all may not agree with this. And I really want to emphasize that I do not co-sign this family doing what they're doing, because at the end of the day, Stephanie and her baby daddy, they're very irresponsible, very immature. I don't know if their prefrontal cortex just isn't working properly, but they don't seem to understand that the future does not look bright if you're sitting here having children over and over and over again in a situation that is already and lacking resources. Now the taxpayers are burdened with taking care of families like this because at the end of the day, we don't want to leave children behind. So there is no neglect happening here based on the fact that these children are having their basic needs met. And I think this is where people have the biggest problem, because they want her to do better, but she's not going to do better. Digging herself out of this hole is going to be really hard for her. And she's over here having TikTok and exploiting her own children. That's not against the law. There's nothing we can do about that. The outrage that the public is displaying is rightfully so, because when we see children that are going to have to grow up like this, we imagine what this is going to do to them in their future. How are they going to do in school? Are they going to have the same opportunities? Are they going to be able to do the same things that other children are doing? No, they're not. But believe it or not, that is not child abuse, and that is not child neglect. And I hate to be the person that says this, because one thing I hate is child abusers and children being raised in conditions that don't give them the best opportunity in life. But also, the state cannot remove children and interfere with families for the sake of the public outrage. That's just not the way it works. Based on the statutory definition of what neglect and abuse is, if somebody came to your home and you were living in those conditions, would a removal be justified? I guarantee you most of y'all are going to say no. And again, I absolutely hate that this is happening to these children. So again, let's just go. The basic needs are identified as adequate food, clothing, shelter, supervision, protection, and or medical care. A lot of people are under the impression that every single child needs to have their own room. They have to be separated by gender, all this stuff. No, that's when you go to court. Like if the court orders that, that is when that is necessary. I don't want people to get upset about this post. In no way am I defending Stephanie Jenkins and, well, that's not even her real name, but the Jenkins, the Resilient Jenkins TikTok account. I'm not defending anything that they do. They have their own drama and they're putting it out there on TikTok. They're airing out their dirty laundry. They're placing the kids on the stage for the world to see. It's embarrassing. We don't know what's going to happen to them in the future. However, I'm going to need the public to understand that this does not constitute a removal. Anyways, that's it for today's commentary. If you want to have conversations around people who are center-leaning without extreme left or right views, then please consider subscribing and like this video.